Hi, this is Dr. Jerica Sarka of Ohio Specific Chiropractic. I'm a family wellness and upper cervical specific chiropractor in Youngstown, Ohio. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the connection between headaches and the upper cervical spine. Now, the goal of chiropractic is not to treat any specific condition or symptoms associated with that condition, such as headaches, but the ultimate goal is to remove neurological interference or disruption to the body system to allow for a greater expression of health and well-being. Now, before we delve deeper into that aspect, we have to do a little bit of a crash course in anatomy and physiology. Now, in the upper cervical spine, there are four structures that we concern ourselves with. The first is the foramen magnum, found on the occipital bone of our skull. Next is the atlas bone, or the first cervical vertebra. Next is the axis bone, or the second cervical vertebra. Now, coming out of the foramen magnum and housed and protected by the atlas and axis bones, we will find the brainstem tissue of the nerve system. Along with those four main structures, we'll also focus on four specific nerves. The first nerve pair is the C1 spinal nerve. It leaves the brainstem in between the occiput bone and the atlas bone. Next, we'll talk about the C2 spinal nerve. It comes out off of the brainstem in between the atlas and the axis bone. Both those spinal nerves will travel back up to the head and supply nerve input to the head, scalp, neck, sinus, eyes, and ears. The next two major nerves we'll talk about are cranial nerves, the accessory nerve, and the vagus nerve. Both the accessory nerve and the vagus nerve leave the occipital bone in close approximation to the foramen magnum and are directly related to the upper cervical spine. Now, the accessory nerve supplies nerve input to the large muscles of our neck and the large muscles of our shoulders. The vagus nerve supplies nerve input to the arteries specifically found in the neck, the heart, lungs, and the GI or gastrointestinal system. Now, the major job of our nerve system can be broken down into four main functions. They are movement, sensation, regulation, and relation. The movement is our nerves create every movement we make. Sensation, they sense everything we feel. Regulation, they regulate every organ, gland, and tissue of our body. And relation, they relate us to the outside world. Now, nerves can get stressed. When nerves get stressed, it affects their sensitivity, perception, and behavior. There are three major types of stresses that affect nerves. They are physical, chemical, and emotional in nature. All these stresses affect the nerves by putting nerve tension on the system and create body imbalance. It's the job of the brainstem to adapt these stresses to balance the nerves and the body. This is what we call homeostasis. Now, the brainstem can't always adapt the stresses perfectly. So if the brainstem can't adapt the stresses, an abnormal compensation occurs. This is what we call in chiropractic a vertebral subluxation. Now, a vertebral subluxation is a physical presentation of this abnormal compensation. So it results in spine imbalance or body imbalance and nerve tension. Another word for spine imbalance is misalignment, and another word we use for nerve tension is interference or disruption. Now, I'm going to kind of draw in our drawing here, I'm going to draw an example of what happens to the spine during a vertebral subluxation. So in this example, we'll have the atlas bone imbalance to the right and rotate forward on the right. Then we'll also have the axis bone imbalanced to the left and and rotate forward on the left. We can see when the spine imbalances, it gets real close, and it alters its relationship to the brainstem and the nerves that are surrounded. And what that does then is it creates nerve tension. Now, when we have this nerve tension, or this interference, or this disruption, it affects the end organ, gland, or tissue to wherever that nerve is going. And what happens is it creates an abnormal sensitivity, perception, and behavior of that nerve and whatever its end input may be. Over time, these abnormal sensations, perceptions, and behaviors can create symptoms. Now, in the example we're using with headaches, there are a large amount of different types of symptoms that can be associated with a headache. So here we have an achy head, or a throbbing, pulsating headache, face pressure, neck pain, just sensitivity to the lights and sounds, increased heart rate or respiratory rate, can have nausea, stomach discomfort, and just overall tightness in the shoulders. Now, when we look at these symptoms, we can see that they are directly correlated to the nerve input from these four major nerves that we talked about. So when we talk about the C1 and C2 nerves, how the input goes to the head, scalp, neck, and sinus, eyes, and ears, we can see how that's associated with just a generalized achy head, face pressure from the sinuses, sensitivity to lights and sounds from the eyes and the ears. And when we look at the accessory nerve, we can have, again, more large spread neck muscles and shoulders, how it can spread into the shoulders and more widespread neck pain. And then with the vagus nerve, how we're affecting the arteries, heart, lungs, and GI system. It can increase our heart rate or our respiratory rates, can create nausea and just discomfort in our stomachs, and also can contribute to that throbbing or pulsating aspect of the headache. Now, again, the goal of chiropractic is not to look at these symptoms individually and try to treat each individual symptom. A lot of times in medicine, what they do is they look at these individual symptoms and try to treat the symptoms accordingly. In chiropractic, we try to go further back down in the line of causation and try to find out what is causing these symptoms to begin with. So when we look at these symptoms, we know that symptoms are created by abnormal sensitivity, perception, and behavior. Well, what's causing this abnormal sensitivity, perception, and behavior? Well, in this case, nerve tension and spine imbalance. And this is what we call in chiropractic a vertebral subluxation. So we try to then correct the vertebral subluxation, which is causing effects down the road. How we correct a vertebral subluxation is through a specific adjustment. What we do is we take specific sets of x-rays, we'll do neurological scans and instrumentation. With the x-ray analysis, we'll determine the spine imbalance, and with our neurological scans and examinations, we'll find that nerve tension. And putting that together, we find your specific vertebral subluxation, which is causing your specific types of effects. Once we correct the vertebral subluxation with the adjustment, we can then allow for greater expression of nerve function. We can allow greater expression of movement, sensation, regulation, and relation. Now, again, this is just a general outline of what happens with the headaches and the connection to the upper cervical spine. If you have further questions or concerns, please reach out to me through my website at ohiospecific.com. Until then, have a good day and great health.